Welcome and great to have you join us as we go off script with Sam Monk, Senior Leader of Equippers Church. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hi and welcome to Off Script with Sam Monk. Great to be with you. Today we're talking about leadership lessons, what's worked and what hasn't. And Sam, particularly personal to me today, we're talking about the expectations of staff. So I feel like I'm on trial here to remember these things. I've been on staff a long time now and thankfully still here and still loving what we get to do together. But we often use this phrase, we don't want to simply, let me start here, we don't want to simply raise the roof, but we want to lift the floor.
Yeah.
Tell me, what does that mean in the context of staff and expectations of what we're talking about?
Well, what it means in the context of culture is when you raise the roof, you can have off-the-chart meeting that lifts the roof off a place. But ultimately, what happens after the meeting really determines whether you are actually moving forward.
Right.
And to raise the roof, it means to raise the aspect of the building.
Yep.
But when you lift the floor, everything lifts.
Great. Yeah.
And we want to see everything lift. And when it comes to, staff, there's some minimum expectations.
Right.
What's the baseline expectations? Because the challenge, I think, to see a culture progress is to keep on lifting that bar.
Right.
It's like the 10 Commandments aren't something to aspire to. Sadly, in today's world, they're aspirational in a lot of places, but for kingdom living, they're just baseline.
Yeah.
It's just like some things like tithing. Tithing 10% is the beginning of a life of generosity. It helps you put in place the discipline of being generous, but it's not. It's the starting point, and so many people, don't have a level of minimum expectations. 10 Commandments is like, hey, don't cheat on your wife, don't kill somebody, they're just baseline levels for living. And I think you got to have that as a staff. You got to have that in certain leadership. Is like, well, what's the minimum here?
Because you should be triggered by a question. I was thinking as you're saying that, like, if someone came in to say a job interview with you and they go, now, how many services on Sunday am I expected to be at? Or, sometimes people ask questions that sort of determine what are the boundaries here of my level of responsibility, rather than, I don't know if those are the questions you want to ask from day one.
No.
You know what I mean? Because you're talking about these are baseline things that actually, no, it's much bigger than just that.
Yeah, you want people to capture
what can I get away with, and still be on team?
Yeah. You want people to capture the heart and the vision of what you're about. And, there's a difference between operating between the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life.
Yeah.
And, one is governed by the edges, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's like, how far can I go without and still be in?
Yeah.
If you're asking those questions, you're probably already out. Whereas the question we need to ask ourselves is, how can we be drawn into the center of what's going on here and be an integral part? And when it comes to staff, naturally they are an integral part of a church's culture, and how they live and how they lead really gets multiplied right throughout an organisation. And so, clarifying when somebody comes on staff is like there's a baseline level of spiritual maturity. Mm-hmm. It's like you assume that. Yeah. Like as an 18-year-old, you shouldn't be telling your 18-year-old to go and brush their teeth.
Right.
You assume they've got that discipline down.
Put deodorant on. Come on, it's not that hard. You smell now. Yeah,
and so you got some of those basics that you're not having to go over. Yeah, and the danger is we bring people on staff where we're having to go over some of the basics.
So that's a great thought, because that's almost before you see a stack of CVs on your desk. It's like if you can't figure those things out, it's best probably not to apply. There are some things you got to just have figured out before you even get here, right? Yep. Otherwise, I think in church, there's great places for people, great places for people to serve, but maybe not volunteer, on staff, right? Volunteer, but okay.
And sometimes we've got to come to a point where in pastoring people, it's better to pastor people off staff than on staff, because otherwise they get confused. Yeah. It's like, you should care about me not brushing my teeth. Yeah. But no, this is something you should have down before you actually come on staff. Otherwise, you're thinking, I'm going to be nitpicky about stuff. And I found, with some people, it's like, hey, there's some things missing here. You need to go back and establish those foundations. And it's actually going to be easier for me to pastor you off staff than on staff, because when you're on staff, you have a role and there's a responsibility, and also each and every one of us have to give an account.
Absolutely.
For what we're doing. And
we move. I mean, ultimately, you move forward quicker that way.
Yeah.
If we're having to slow down to say people put deodorant on, brush your teeth.
Yeah.
If we're having to talk about things of hygiene.
Yeah.
In the context of this, then you're not having other conversations. There's the opportunity cost of doing that. You're not talking about these things of vision and moving forward. And so when you can assume a bunch of things, you don't. They're off the table. You don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
So already you can say, cool, we're going to be talking about vision, and so you're moving the organisation forward faster as well.
Yeah, there's baseline.
And the kingdom,
it's just like baseline.
Yeah,
it's like the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Hey, you're not going to cheat on your wife. You're not going to do. There's some baseline foundations, and you got your foundations established there, which I think is really important. But which brings me to when it comes to expectations for staff, they're not complicated because there's a level of maturity that people understand these expectations through. And so my big thing is, number one is keep yourself connected.
Right.
Keep yourself connected. We know in our hearts when things drift. Mm-hmm. And it often happens, there's a drift. It's just when, oh man, I'm not connecting in the way I know I should be, or I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I'm just not feeling it right now. Okay, well, what do you need to do so that you can feel it?
Yeah.
What conversations do you need to have? The danger is we're expecting oversight to know exactly what's going on in our lives and how we're feeling. I go, man, I don't have ESP.
Yeah.
I have ESPN, which is a sports channel. But I don't know. I shouldn't need a prophetic word to know what's going on in your life.
Good.
You are mature enough to have the conversation and sit down. Hey, I'm not feeling it. I feel on the outer. I feel this. Okay, let's talk about how we can adjust some things so that connection is there. I'm connected to the vision. I'm connected to the heart of what's going on. I'm connected, and at least the conversation can take place. Which that connection is a really important thing. Is we need that place of belonging. It's not like I'm just doing a job and then I'm out, but I have no connection to what I'm doing. So keeping yourself connected, which then leads to the second one, is keep communicating.
Okay.
Keep communicating. And it's just like the maturity to be able to communicate, have the conversation. I don't mind having difficult conversations. In fact, I don't mind having arguments. I think the best creativity has often come through conflict, a contesting of ideas. And many people shy away from that because they've experienced conflict in their background, and it's ended up being nasty.
Or a slanging match or shouting at each other.
Throwing stuff. But it's like we've got to actually develop a culture where we can have conflict. There can be a contesting of ideas, because that's where creativity comes from. But we do it with grace, and we've got a level of communication where we can debate the issue and not attack the person.
But also a lack of, again, it kind of goes back to this. There are some baseline expectations. That a lack of communication is a really, really frustrating thing.
Yeah.
Like people just simply not communicating. Like there's a lot of things that we can be moving forward on, but basic communication, they seem like really little things can have quite a big impact over time as well.
Yeah. And, we can't wait for that email or wait for somebody to ring us. I'm going like...
Well, I assumed you knew that thing, or I assumed it was already,
And it's putting the initiative back on the staff. Rather than the oversight. It's just going, hey, there's a level of maturity here. If you're feeling out of the loop, come on, you need to...
Like you need to get on the phone. You need to talk. You need to upline stuff.
Have if you're feeling this, if you're feeling not feeling connected, come on, communicate.
Yeah.
And then which brings me to the third area is keeping yourself current. And, if you've been employed in the area, it's like you need to invest in yourself and developing your gift. Yes, we employed your gift and your grace and you as a person, but there's a point where you got to develop it. And I think in any relationship, when one person grows and the other stays the same, there's always going to become tension in that relationship.
Massive,
and that happens at a marriage level, but it also happens at a staff level, where somebody is just resting on what they learnt 10 years ago and they haven't upskilled and they haven't grown and they haven't, developed or invested into their gift or the area of responsibility.
So talk about that, because that's not just, I know design type areas are really obvious ones. Sometimes you can kind of go, it just feels a bit sort of same old, like we did this last year before. But it's not just those areas of keeping current, is it?
No, is keeping current, knowing what's happening, knowing, but also, making sure that you're investing time where you've got time to work on, not just work in a role, but work on.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah, so you get that bird's eye view, that perspective. What are other people doing? How could we learn from them?
Yeah.
I think there's so many people who are doing stuff far and beyond what we're doing, and it's like we're crazy not to glean and learn from and be aware of. Otherwise, it's so easy to become a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge of leadership is always putting yourself in a bigger pond.
Good, yeah.
Where you feel insecure, because that's where growth happens.
Yeah.
If you don't feel a little bit insecure, you always want your world to be comfortable and in a place where you feel like you're on top of everything. That's probably an area where you're going to actually circumnavigate your growth and the development of something.
Yeah, and I guess also, we don't simply want to copy things that are out there. Like we're the Church of Jesus Christ. Like we should be creating the culture.
Yeah.
So being current is about, no, we don't just want to do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
But especially do what the world is doing, but let's create culture. Let's do something different where people go, look at the church, like look at what they're doing. That's incredible. Look at the creativity that's coming out. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? There's a frustration that sometimes we just mimic things, and that's not a bad thing. It's a great form of flattery. Like there are good things that other churches or organizations are doing, but we want to create culture.
Yeah, and culture, and I think that's where, the call to be prophetic is really, which is sometimes not doing a new thing, but doing it is the timing.
Yeah.
And I think, there's an intersection between what you're doing and the timing in which you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where, something can be prophetic, has a prophetic action that opens up.
Yeah, cool.
Opens up new spaces.
Yeah.
And so, that comes back to even your prayer life.
Yeah.
It comes back to, dreaming with God, letting God speak through your imagination.
Yeah, good.
Pictures and how you're doing things, rather than just, seeing what the world is doing and taking that and, replicating
it. Yeah, exactly.
that in church. So,
hey, before we close, bonus question.
Yeah.
So you obviously lead a lot of staff and around a lot of countries around the world, but I probably understand for a lot of people, you might be one pastor leading a small church of like 100, 150 people, and you're doing well. And then there's always that question of, okay, when do I hire maybe that second person?
Yeah.
And what area? Like, I don't know, what advice, because we do get this question a lot.
Yeah.
Like what areas, and I know it's a bit of a hard question to answer, but what areas would you look to invest into if you were taking on a second or third type staff member?
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer to that.
Yeah.
The question I'm asking myself, though, is what has brought the church growth?
Okay.
And
Great.
what is going to enable the church to keep growing?
Yeah.
Because, that's the question, where do I need to employ somebody's time?
Yeah, good.
So that the church can keep moving.
Right.
Forward in areas. And I think what I'm asking is how can I release breakthrough gifts?
Cool. Okay.
Because there's certain players on teams that are just, they can change the game.
Yeah.
They can change the game. You need everybody on team, but those breakthrough players, those game breakers.
So get them the ball.
Get them the ball.
Okay.
It takes the church into new territories, and we've got to be mature enough to recognize that.
Yeah.
And if we can back our game breakers, it's going to cause the whole church to enter into a new space, which then creates room for other gifts and graces. Cool. And so, last thing I'm thinking when I'm employing a staff is plugging holes.
Okay. They'll do.
well, just we need to plug this hole. We've got this hole, and so we need to plug this hole. Yeah. Often I'd say, as well. Here's a provoking thought. So often we employ staff to compensate for where there's a lack of kingdom culture.
Scary.
And that is dangerous. It's like if we move forward as a church, we just need more staff. The goal as a church is not to have more staff. The goal of a church is to mobilize the body.
Great.
And the question we need to say is this going to result, employing staff, is this going to result in a greater mobilization of the body?
Yeah. Because often you say that if the answer is just more people, sometimes it's just lazy thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, I need more people or more money.
Yeah.
It's just lazy thinking. Rather, no, we need more creativity is what we need often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the goal is to get every believer
mobilize,
finding their fit, doing their part, and that builds up the body.
Every joint supplies.
Yeah, and so that's got to be the goal rather than building an institution.
Great answer. Great conversation around expectations of staff, and again, I hope this has been helpful to you. But otherwise, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Off Script with Sam Monk. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure you pass it on. We love your feedback, so drop us a line about what topics you'd like to hear about on Off Script with Sam Monk.